if we look at the surface analysis chart of the US, it's really not very bad, right? The big thing that's going on in the country right now that's going to continue moving east is these low pressure systems. Those are bringing in some yucky weather. So this whole northeast region, if you are in clouds, you're going to pick up icing. Hey guys, welcome to AeroSafe. I'm Erica Gilbert, an instrument instructor located in central Kentucky. I developed AeroSafe as a way to help you make a go or no-go decision. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive into the weather. We're going to look at synoptic charts, freezing levels. We're going to look at air mets and sigmets. We're going to look at general areas of VFR weather, general areas of IFR weather. And within those, we're going to look at potential hazards in each of them. The whole point is to help you make a more informed go or no-go decision. Now, of course, as PIC, only you have the authority over and final responsibility for the flight. Only you can make the go or no-go decision. This is just to enhance your decision making. Now, the information in this video isn't just for pilots who are planning to go on a flight to long cross country or even a local flight. It's also great for learner pilots, student pilots, who are trying to figure out what all this stuff means anyway. I want to start the video today by reviewing a question that was left on the video from Sunday, December 3rd. Let's see. Alan Hawes here asked, at 2:25, is the blue cold front overtaking the warm front, causing the occluded front in the Dakotas? Also, what is the trough in Michigan doing, and how is it interacting with the occluded front? All right. In the Dakotas, yes, absolutely. So I zoomed in to the time that you're asking about here. We've got a low pressure system up here, and coming down from North Dakota, there's an occluded front, which is created by the warm front and the cold front. Now, cold fronts are often much more quickly moving. They're faster moving than warm fronts. So what's going on is that cold front is catching up to this warm front, and where they all meet is the occluded front, which is essentially three masses of air that are mixing together. Okay, normally we get really quite bad weather, right? The cold air has wedged up under the warm air, which is coming in on top of the cold air, and you get a bunch of crap going on, kind of similar to over here. Now, the next part of your question is, what is the trough in Michigan doing, and how is it interacting with the occluded front? So a trough is an elongated area of low pressure, typically indicative of an unstable atmosphere. So we'll see rising air, lifting action, just the same kind of stuff that we see with a low pressure, generally bad weather, right? So that's kind of showing that this low pressure system is elongated, and you could expect that same weather within that system to exist towards the west as well. So great question, Alan. Thanks for asking that. Alrighty, let's get started looking at the weather for today. We're going to start, as we always do, with the current surface analysis chart. It is December 6th, presently where I am, 4:33, that's Eastern time, and Zulu 21:33. Okay, so if we look at the surface analysis chart of the US, it's really not very bad, right? On Sunday, it was really gross, lots of low pressure, cold fronts. But as you can see, a lot of that has moved out now into the Atlantic Ocean, right? We see this really big high pressure system prevailing throughout a lot of the US here, the southeastern US. Really not a whole lot going on outside of that in terms of the synopsis chart with the pressures and the fronts. Over here in the west, we see lots of little high pressure systems and low pressure systems with troughs. Now we've got, because there are so many different pressures here, we've got pressure gradients. It would be expected probably that there'd be some surface winds and some instability going on, maybe some low visibility. The big thing that's going on in the country right now that's going to continue moving east is these low pressure systems with cold fronts and some stationary fronts. Those are bringing in some yucky weather, right? The air is rising, sucking in all the stuff. We've got the lifting action, which is creating clouds that are condensing and creating precipitation. And because it's cold up there, we do see some returns that are frozen precipitation. That's going to continue to advance across the northern part of the country throughout the week. In fact, we can look at the surface prog charts. So this is the current surface analysis chart. And if we look at the prog chart for 24 hours from now, we can see that that big low pressure system has advanced a little bit east and south. The high pressure systems that prevail are continuing to move to the east as well over Alabama, South Carolina. We do have a cold front that's expected to come down and run into this warm front, creating an occluded front and some low pressure up over Ontario, Canada there. All these low pressure systems, the troughs and everything up in the northwest are expected to create a lot of precipitation. We see rain with very likely here, and then frozen mixes are likely as well, along with snow. So Idaho, you're going to be pretty wet tomorrow, it looks like. If we look forward another 12 hours, 36 hours from now, we see that low pressure system has again moved a little farther east, a little farther south, bringing that occluded front with it, and that precipitation is continuing. The area is going to grow a little bit. And one more, looks like it's going to get cold, right? We move from a lot of rain to now it's pretty much all frozen precipitation. That low pressure system looks like it's going, no, it's not increasing in strength, but it is staying as strong as it was, right? That 999 millibars, that's pretty low pressure, right? And it's pretty big. Throughout the rest of the country, that high pressure system looks like it's going to stay around Georgia for a little bit. And then that cold front is elongating. That continental polar air is going to keep coming down, pushing down. And that cold front is going to push through. Looks like it's going to just kind of advance across the country and push a lot through. So those are our surface analysis and prog charts for the next couple of days. So if we were to look at general areas of IFR weather, general areas of VFR weather, we can look at our interactive map on flight service. And as the synoptic chart supports, we see that there are clear skies and VFR flight categories through a large portion of the country, right? As we zoom in here, we see lots of green, lots of open circles, which means that is VFR in terms of visibility, because there is no ceiling when there's an open circle. Now up here in the northeast, we're starting to see some circles filled in. We're starting to see some blue circles, which indicate marginal VFR. We also see a couple red weather reporting stations here and there. Let's see. Let's just look at Pennsylvania here. We'll just choose one right in the middle. State College. All right, we've got 10 miles of visibility broken at 5,000. Now that definitely would be VFR. If you're en route and your destination were VFR, that's high enough ceilings that you could fly VFR pretty low, right? So it would depend on your airplane, but you could very easily stay below the ceilings with your VFR weather minimums and get there safely. If you wanted to climb above that, that's where we need to start looking at the freezing level, okay? It is winter, freezing level is coming down. So let's see, let's look at this. This jagged line, it means it's 0 degrees on the surface. It's freezing on the surface. So if you're on the surface or above the surface and you're in visible precipitation, visible moisture, there will be icing. All right, and that's probably going to be supported by, if we pull up a layer, that's going to be supported by an AirMet Zulu. I'm going to remove everything. Oh, I'll just leave the freezing level up. Oh, wouldn't you look at that? AirMet for icing, AirMet Zulu for icing, severity moderate. Base is the freezing level, which is between 3,000 and 10,000. Tops, between 1,000 and 3,000. And the tops are at 8,000. So if you're cruising between 1,000 and 3,000, you're going to be getting icing in Ohio and West Virginia. If you're in that Pennsylvania area we were talking about, freezing level is from the surface to 2,000. Tops are 10,000. Moderate severity icing, right? So this whole northeast region, if you are in clouds, which there are clouds through a good portion of it, right? We see the green dots and the blue dots, they're filled in. It's either VFR or marginal VFR. There's clouds pretty close. you're going to pick up icing. If you do not have an airplane that is capable of flight into known icing, that would be a no-go situation. Absolutely. Oops. All right, we'll zoom back in here. We also have a AirMet Zulu up in the northwest region of the US, which makes sense. That's up where we saw all those low pressure systems and a lot of precipitation. It's cold up that way. Freezing levels between 5,000 and 10,000. The tops are at 20,000. Severity is moderate. Okay. We combine that with looking at the flight category. We've got some low IFR, marginal, some VFR, but generally speaking, I wouldn't want to be doing a cross country up in that region today. You'd be picking up icing and you would be calling for help ASAP. Now, outside of that, I really don't see any areas of concern in terms of icing or IFR weather. Now, what we would need to do is, I'm going to remove that AirMet Zulu, and I'd like to put on AirMet Tango, see what's going on. So these are general areas of VFR weather everywhere other than the northwest and the northeast. Let's look at what's going on. Over here in Idaho, we have a low-level turbulence, AirMet. Base is the surface, top at 18,000, severity moderate. I have personally flown an AirMet Tango, a low-level AirMet Tango, and it was miserable. I was in a Cessna 172 and I had to divert. I told ATC that I was diverting for turbulence, and wouldn't you know, 10 or 15 minutes after I landed, it went from an AirMet to a SIGMET. Whether or not that was connected to my reporting of the turbulence and my diversion for the turbulence, I'm not entirely sure. Okay, we also have a wind shear. Low-level wind shear AirMet. Airspeed loss or gain of 20 knots or more below 2,000 feet AGL. That's a big deal. Potentially quite dangerous, especially if you're on final and all of a sudden you lose 20 or more knots, right? We're not far above the stall speed when we're at 1.3 VSO. The loss of 20 knots when you're at 65 knots is huge. Very dangerous, potential to stall close to the ground. That would be a no-go situation for me. So while it looks like VFR weather, I mean, you could still go out to the airport, ask the dudes that flew in front of you, what did it feel like out there, what did it look like out there, but generally speaking, that'd probably be a day to do some ground instruction with your favorite flight instructor. Let's see, we've got some other AirMets over here and some VFR weather. We've got high level turbulence moderate, 240 to 400, not exactly pertinent for us as general aviation pilots. However, like we talked about last time, it is an indication of the stability in the atmosphere. We have an AirMet off the coast of the eastern US for sustained surface winds greater than 30 knots. There's not even any weather reporting stations out there to know what's going on, so that doesn't matter. I'm not flying out there anyway. Low level turbulence over West Virginia, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina. Moderate. Base at surface, top at 8,000. So, you know, pretty simple today. It looks pretty nice for the most part. We go back to the surface analysis. We see all these areas of high pressure, a little bit of low pressure and some troughs. But we know that generally speaking, the areas of IFR weather are going to be the northeast and the northwest. And because of the freezing levels and the ceilings and the amount of precipitation, that's a no-go situation unless you're certified for flight to known icing and you have experienced it before. Everywhere else, it's really just kind of a matter of, does it look good in your local area? Do you have the ceilings necessary to meet your personal minimums at your airport, departure, at your destination, and en route? Looks like a pretty nice day here in the US. It's going to progress. It's going to get kind of nasty here in the next couple days, as we saw. Winds aloft are really interesting as well. We could take a quick look at those. These are at 5,000 feet. Up here around the Great Lakes area, we see winds aloft at 5,000 feet at about 40 knots. And then we see the same thing over way off the coast, but not a big deal. In those areas of high pressure, we see very little wind at 5,000 feet, very, very little wind. For the most part, it looks pretty westerly across a lot of the US. The winds in the southeast are pretty northerly. Must be high pressure down here. Yeah, high pressure right here. So that's to be expected. Important to take into account your fuel burn, right? Your ground speed. Do you meet your fuel, the legal fuel reserves, and your personal minimums in terms of fuel reserves? All right, now we're looking at a forecast. Low level, significant weather. Okay, this is very similar to what we've already looked at, right? We know that we're gonna have IFR weather in the northwest, IFR weather in the northeast. We know there's turbulence out in the west. Freezing level at the surface through a large portion of the US. In here, in the purple, up here, a little bit in West Virginia. Virginia and North Carolina. Okay. Yeah, so this kind of reiterates what we talked about earlier. We do see those areas of turbulence. We do see those IFR areas. And then, you know, for the most part, if you're down here in the south central and southeast US, it looks great. Other than that, you really want to take a little bit deeper dive into what the conditions are at your airport and your destination. So I talked a little bit about personal minimums today, and I do have a question for you. If you submit in the comments 3 conditions that are within your own personal minimums, you'll get an AeroSafe sticker. I'll reach out to you and send it to you. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them below, and I'll answer them in the next video. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you later. Bye.